Hello and welcome to the Nomiki Show. I am Nomiki Konst. I'm coming to you today from Puerto Rico, the femicide capital of North America. Exactly. 60 women were killed last year because they were women. The island has registered 21 femicides this year alone, and this figure is on track to last year. Yet this year, the police only reported 8 murders, as they are frequently criticized for underreporting femicides. So 60 women last year, and already 21 femicides this year alone. It has been this way for years now. A girl or a woman murdered every week for years. Yet the overcarpet of gender equality states April, there was a huge surge, possibly due to the rise in COVID cases and intense lockdown, as the pandemic has created a dangerous situation for many women in abusive situations. But finally, in January, the new governor of Puerto Rico, Pedro Pierluisi, said, okay, enough is enough. The governor declared that the murders of women and girls had created a state of emergency in Puerto Rico after several cries for help. He directed resources and attention at this scourge of gender violence-based violence. So what happened? Well, last Thursday, just a few days ago, Felix Verdejo, a professional, well-known boxer, punched his pregnant lover, his girlfriend, Keishla Rodriguez Ortiz, in the face. Then, this is horrifying, according to the FBI, he injected her with a syringe filled with an unidentified substance. He bound her hands with the assistance of someone else and her feet with wire and tied her to a heavy block before tossing her off of the Teodoro Moscoso Bridge into the San Juan Lagoon. A very, very busy bridge. In fact, I've driven over it twice in the last couple of days. And then he shot her body multiple times with a pistol. Rodriguez's family says that Verdejo did not want her to have their child. She was pregnant. Her mother said she warned Rodriguez to be careful before she told him the results of the pregnancy test. They had been together for 11 years in a complicated relationship. Now, it might be tempting to think that this was some sort of horrifying aberration. After all, Verdejo was a man who made his living off of his fists. He fought in the 2012 Olympics. He had a professional record of 27 wins and only 2 losses. He knocked out 17 opponents. Perhaps that boxing history makes the murder of Keishla Rodriguez Ortiz all the more horrible, but it does not make it in the least bit exceptional. Gender-based violence has been endemic here. Just the day before Rodriguez Ortiz was murdered, Andrea Ruiz was found burned to death in a mountain town. She had asked for an order of restraining order against her ex-partner who was threatening her, but she was denied by the courts. Andrea Ruiz did just what we are told to do: go to court, file suits against our abusers, get a restraining order if you're threatened, go to the cops. If you don't understand why we are so angry right now, then you have no idea. We are outraged. She said what she was supposed to do. She did what she was supposed to do and said what she was supposed to do, and the system failed her. As he took office in January, the governor of Puerto Rico tweeted, quote, "For too long, vulnerable victims have suffered the consequences of systemic machismo, inequality, discrimination, lack of education, lack of guidance, and above all, lack of action," end quote. So we all felt encouraged that at least there would be action. He issued his emergency declaration. But here's the catch. In a territory where even the governor's allocation of $7 million in funds can be overridden by a fiscal control board, the fiscal management board that was not elected has the supreme power over all of the democratically elected lawmakers on the island. And the fiscal management board, that control board, has allocated only $225,000 towards the femicide crisis. So now what? They promise they are in the works of allocating funds to fight gender violence. But it's too late to save Keishla Rodriguez Ortiz and her unborn child. It's too late way too late and too little to save Andrea Ruiz. You can't let them die in vain. Zoanda Villa Colon, who's a spokesperson for La Colectiva Feminista en Construcción, told Refinery 29, this is a feminist organization, a grassroots feminist organization. Zoanda Villa Colon said, quote, sadly, these cases have revealed the deep failures of the system that's supposed to help and protect women. And so every day, before these murders, these femicides, and now today and yesterday and tomorrow, they take to the streets. The island is outraged, but the world should be outraged because this is happening everywhere. There is a surge because of COVID, but the surge has only revealed the systemic issues. This is happening in New York City. This is happening in Nebraska. This is happening in Mexico. This is happening in Guatemala. This is happening in conjunction with the police covering up the real numbers. This has to be addressed. I'm going to show you a clip of a protest outside of the governor's mansion demanding more because the governor issued a 30-day mourning period for a previous governor who passed away 2 nights ago. And naturally, people are outraged that he took that more seriously than standing up to the Fiscal Control Board and quickly, there's been a little bit of action, but not enough, issuing reforms to the justice system that has revealed itself to be inadequate. When a woman knows that they're in danger, they shouldn't have to have the person next to them that's putting them in danger to be able to get that restraining order. Let's play these clips. Welcome back to the Nomiki Show, live from Puerto Rico. I'm very excited. Another territory we're going to be talking about. There's some similarities here. Andrew Ross is the author of Stone Men, The Palestinians Who Built Israel. It's being published. It's published by Verso Books. He's a professor of social and cultural analysis at NYU, and he's a social activist. He's also a frequent contributor to The Nation, Village Voice, The New York Times, among many others. I think we're getting a little feedback, Andrew. I don't know if you have this playing somewhere. I feel like I'm an NPR host saying.
Oh, sorry. I don't know what that would be. Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea what that could be. The feedback. What do you want to do?
Let's just hold for 1 second. If you can check out your chat, Dorsey's going to give you some instructions, probably, hopefully. Okay, he says it should be fine. All right, that's better. There we go. Now we can hear. I don't know. He's magical. Let's start from the beginning. Andrew Ross is the author of Stone Men, The Palestinians Who Built Israel, published by Verso Books. He's a professor of social and cultural analysis at NYU, and he's a social activist. He's a frequent contributor to The Nation, Village Voice, The New York Times, among many other places. All right, so this is an interesting story. How did you learn about... I'd rather have you explain it, but how did you learn that stonemasons from Palestine were involved in building Israel?
Okay, good question. Well, I was helping some colleagues make a film in the West Bank, and they'd invited me to interview workers who were crossing the Green Line at checkpoints to go and work in Israel. And in the course of doing the interviews, I gathered some knowledge about what they do, and also how crucial they are to the Israeli economy, because there's as many as 150,000 of them who cross the Green Line every day to do this kind of work. And then I started doing a little of my own research to figure out how useful a book would be. I mean, if you want to write a book, you better make sure it's going to be a useful book. And so I discovered that there's actually very little written about what Palestinians do on a daily basis to put food on the table for their families. Like, a lot of the attention of Palestine watchers is on other things like land dispossession or human rights violations or mass incarceration and the like, and all for a very good reason. Mm-hmm. But there's very little attention to Palestinian livelihoods. And I also realized that no one had written a proper study of the stone and marble industry in the West Bank, which is such a crucial part of the Palestinian economy.
So let's start with that, just the industry in general, and then we can talk a little bit more about what the day in the life of a Palestinian worker in Israel is like. But how large is this industry?
Well, it's the biggest private sector employer in the West Bank. It contributes the largest share of Palestine's GDP and the largest share of its exports. For such a tiny population, it's actually the world's 12th largest stone producer. I mean, just behind the US and in front of Russia. Stone, the limestone I'm talking about is a dolomitic limestone. It's some of the best limestone in the world. It's one of the two natural resources that Palestinians have and that Israel does not have, or has a very short supply. One of them is water, and Israelis siphon off a lot of that water using advanced pumping technologies. The other one is this very precious limestone, and it's the process of quarrying it and finishing and cutting it in the workshops and factories, and then deploying it to actually build comprises about 1,200 firms overall, most of them small family-owned firms. So it's an industry that's very much under Palestinian control. And as for supply, some of it's used obviously locally, some of it is exported to other countries in the Middle East, but most of it, more than 70% of it, goes to Israel itself or to Israeli settlements in the West Bank. So this is the paradox of the story, of the very contents of Palestinian land used to build out the state, the Israeli state, the occupier state. In effect, that's the tragedy at the heart of it.
The people who own these companies, why Israel? Why not do more work in other countries that are a little bit more hospitable?
Well, they have little choice. The Palestinian producers have no choice. I mean, they're under occupation. They have no choice but to supply the stone, basically, and the stone is in their, is within their orbit, and they're also very limited in terms of what they can export. Palestinians are basically restricted in terms of their export. So very little of that stone can be exported. Very little Palestinian produce is exported. So Israel takes most of it, in effect, and basically depends on it for its building needs. The Israeli state wouldn't exist without Palestinian stone, and also the Palestinian labor that traveled with it. And so most of my book is based on interviews with these workers, from the quarries, in the factories, construction sites, and also in the villages that lie close to Israeli settlements in the West Bank. I interviewed a lot of the owners of the firms.
Of the firms, are they selling it at like market rate? I'm very curious, like what these deals are looking like, and also why, and if it's possible for Israelis to own parts of the company. I assume not, but I'm curious why they go with this arrangement and not just overt seizure of the businesses.
Well, that's a good question. Most of the firms are located in Area B or Area C. The West Bank is broken down into A, B, and C. So they're sort of under Palestinian control, these areas. Israeli companies began to quarry in Area C for a while until there were lawsuits lodged. It's against international law for an occupying power to exploit the resources of an occupied country in that way. And so the lawsuit put a stop to those practices. But that's the main reason why there isn't Israeli ownership of the industries, and it remains in Palestinian hands.
Okay, so what are the conditions like? I mean, you have the owners who I assume are not making market rate. My assumption would be if they were to sell to another country, Dubai, Greece, whatever, pick a country, they would be getting a higher rate. But simultaneously, they're still the bosses. So do they have oversight over the conditions and how they treat their workers, or is that up to somebody else?
Well, there are a lot of restrictions on how they actually do their business. One of them, for example, is that Palestinian producers are not allowed to use explosives in the quarries. And this puts them at a considerable disadvantage. They have to use a fairly primitive stone cutting machinery. It means they can produce a lot less than they would otherwise, obviously. And there are all sorts of other restrictions on the logistics of actually delivering the stone and so on and so forth. So it's under constraint. They operate under constraint. And to some degree, those conditions are passed down, as with any other employer, are passed down to the workers themselves, who, I think your question implies, have a particularly hard time of it. They're relatively, well paid by industry standards in the West Bank, but the workers can earn a lot more if they actually travel across the Green Line and go to work in Israel, which most of them will do, given the chance, given a work permit, which is issued by Israel itself. And to do that involves most of your day. I mean, workers getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning from their villages, traveling from there to the checkpoints. It's a very arduous journey across the Green Line. It's a dangerous journey. And then they travel to their workplace sites. They come back, and they're often not back until late in the evening. So there's really very little time to spend with their families. It's a very grueling and dangerous routine on a daily basis.
Who sets these standards? Why can't they use explosives? Who's deciding that?
Israeli authorities.
I mean, doesn't that work against their interests? Don't they want to produce more? And it seems like an odd choice, a strategy for.
Well, it's only one of the many, many, many constraints that Israeli authorities place on Palestinians' everyday routines and terms of business and so on and so forth. It's that's only one example. I mean, there are many others that have to do with logistics that Palestinian producers get very angry about. And the workers themselves, of course, are also very aware of the constraints placed upon the conditions of their travel, and also the conditions of their work in Israel itself. Construction work is very dangerous in Israel in general. There's a lot of accidents on site, and very few labor standards that apply to Palestinian workers. Plus, there's also the dangers of working in the stone industry itself. It's very toxic. It's environmentally damaging, the dust from the stone. And it's sometimes referred to in Palestine as white oil, this limestone. And there's some similarity with other countries, other underdeveloped countries that rely on oil as their primary natural resource. It's often spoken of as a resource curse because it's environmentally damaging. And if you travel through the West Bank, you can see these beautiful hilltop landscapes that are scarred by open mining and quarries.
Are they at risk of running out of limestone? I mean, it's not a large area. I'm curious how this industry continues to exist.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Some of the best limestone is mined out, and there's still a lot left in Area C, but Palestinian producers can't access it. They do it, they do it behind the soldiers' backs on Saturday and Sunday.
Wow.
Or they bribe the soldiers, take their machines in and do it. But the fate of that stone is still in the balance. It's unclear. It's unclear what will happen. But at some point, someone will make a decision, because the Israel depends on the stone to build out their state. There's a big housing shortage in Israel right now, and exacerbated by the pandemic, of course. And so at some point, that additional resource will have to be tapped.
Is there any organizing happening, around the world, in Israel with progressives, perhaps, or even in Palestine or the West Bank? Are workers organizing? Is there any sort of pushback right now in how this industry functions?
Yes, I mean there are worker unions in the industry. They're very weak. They're very weak compared to the employers' trade associations. But they're mostly focused on safety conditions, opposed to wages and other conditions. And there is pressure on the Israeli side by NGOs and labor groups within Israel that they do go to bat for Palestinian workers who cross the Green Line. And in some cases, some independent unions that are organizing workers in the West Bank settlement, the industrial zones in the settlements. Palestinian unions can't organize there, even though it's in the West Bank, but Israeli unions can. And one or two of them have been organizing workers there.
Really? So the Israeli unions are organizing, It's fascinating, in solidarity. Okay. I mean, where do they go from here if they're organizing? Is there the government is obviously in complete disarray in Israel right now? Is there any hope, any responsiveness?
It's steady work, and there are steady gains. I mean, there are gains recorded every year. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to organize across the green line because there's a lot of distrust and suspicion, especially between Palestinians and Israelis. It's not supposed to happen officially, but I found that it does, and I recorded some of that in my book. The half of the book, however, is about the history that leads up to this, the very rich and venerable history of Palestinian stonemasonry, which is a very important story in the region. Palestinians have always had venerated stonemasons. Every small village had master masons who designed and built. They built everything, and over time, that tradition has flowed into this custom of having stone workers be the basic construction workforce, not in Palestine but also in Israel.
Oh, also in Israel. So are they coordinated in any way?
Well, the Israeli Palestinians have also obviously been active in the workforce. I mean, they're outnumbered by the Palestinians from the West Bank. Israeli Palestinians are slightly higher in the pecking order when it comes to jobs. So the lowest paying jobs in construction will be done either by Palestinians from the West Bank or by migrant workers who've been brought in from parts of the world as a replacement workforce for Palestinians.
Wow. Before we wrap up, can you just give us like a basic illustration of the other conditions living in the West Bank as a Palestinian? You talked about their travel restrictions. I mean, the water situation is abysmal. Could you kind of describe, a basic 30,000 foot perspective of what it's like to live a day in life in the West Bank?
Well, I can only really speak about the workers themselves who I talk to because they're the ones I have most knowledge of. I mean, I spent time in Palestine, but not as someone really studying the landscape. I'm more familiar with the psychology of humiliation that most of the workers in that industry have to contend with because they're working for the occupier. And as one of them put it, we build their houses while they demolish our homes. And the difference between houses and homes there was very important to him. At the same time, they're very steadfast in their resilience. I mean, this is a Palestinian resistance philosophy called sumud, steadfastness. Despite all of the indignities and the obstacles thrown in their path, often on a daily basis, just to get to work, they continue to show up. I mean, day after day, they go through this routine, and they've been doing this for decades. That resilience really impressed me. I don't know if it would be within my spirit to do so, but they have no alternative, and this is the technical tragedy of the system. The alternative is a starvation wage. They don't go to work in Israel. The alternative is a starvation wage. So it's a compulsory workforce. And for Israelis, it's a win-win situation because they will issue work permits, but only on condition that the workers and their families keep the peace. So if someone steps out of line,
Their families?
their family or their extended kinship, and gets into trouble, gets arrested, which is very easy to do if you're Palestinian, then you lose your work permit. You lose your livelihood. So it's a very effective form of economic pacification. a very effective form of social control of this population. And if you asked, why would Israeli employers prefer Palestinians to migrant workers, for example, who you would think might be even more under pressure and vulnerable? Well, migrant workers tend to send their wages back to their countries.
Right.
Palestinians take their wages home and they buy Israeli goods in the West Bank at Israeli prices. So it's a win-win economically. And also they go home every night.
Right.
There's a commuter workforce. So it's not like the migrant workers who are there, who are a presence in the cities in Israel, and who might pose a burden on the state, let's say, in terms of resources they might need. So it's a very well thought out system of economic pacification.
Fascinating. Andrew Ross, go check out his book. It's Verso, Verso Publisher, our partner over at the book club, the TNS Book Club. It's called Stone Men, the Palestinians Who Built Israel. Really interesting. What a fascinating thing to discover while working there. You can check out his book right now. It's on versobooks.com and you can order it wherever you buy your books, as long as it's not Amazon. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you for having me on.
We'll be right back with Jordan Zakarin and Simon Narode to talk about all the news that's happening right now. And I just got a breaking news alert. What is going on now? All right, we'll talk about it. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, you guys know I love it. It's Sunset Lake CBD. They're a farmer-owned company that ships quality craft CBD from their farm in Vermont directly to your door. They have a farm that was once a Ben and Jerry's. I mean, literally, like if you're going to pick any farm, that would be the one to go to. Good juju, right? The Ben and Jerry's farm in Vermont, and they decided to diversify and grow premium hemp. Customers of Sunset Lake CBD support sustainable agriculture that enhances rural economies and creates meaningful employment in their community. Their minimum wage is $15 an hour, and employees own the majority of the company, and they support independent media like our show, The Nomiki Show, The David Pakman Show, and Okay. As we were saying, Dorsey, which CBD products are you using right now? Are you there? Did we lose you?
Yeah, sorry, I was just putting the thumbnail.
I don't know what's going on. I thought that was, I've changed locations since last time, so I have a different Wi-Fi system. I don't know what's going on.
Luckily, my Wi-Fi is good, so everything
Puerto
stayed.
Rico. It's called Fiscal Control Board, and nothing is being funded because hedge funds in New York want to make all the money. Yes. Anyways, as we were saying, what CBD products are you using?
I actually had a gummy right before the show, and so
that's why you're so slow to respond right now.
Slow to respond. I'm just like, hey, I'm taking it as it comes. You know, what are we gonna do? I'm doing like 5 things at once. And
I'm kidding. You're totally fine. I'm just joking.
CBD is helping out.
I'm just joking. I'm being difficult. No, but really, we love Sunset Lake CBD. Your partner loves the coffee. My family loves the fudge. We've bought all sorts of, we do it as a team now. Everybody buys it together. I don't know why, because you can individually, I don't know, I guess it's more sustainable. But, you know, guys, if you, guys and gals, mostly guys, because this is YouTube politics.
Come on, guys.
Come on, guys, and 4 girls, women, whoever, anybody. We are all inclusive here. You can get 20% off of your order if you type in NOMI, N-O-M-I, all capital, or not. I'm sure they'll take it both ways. At sunsetlakecbd.com. Dorsey, what should everybody buy if their first purchase? What's their entry point?
The gummies. Go all in on the gummies right away. Right. Get a big one too, because you'll regret it if you just get the, just get a big one. It's like,
that's it. Don't share with me, because I stopped buying the gummies because I would eat all of them. And then I'd be like, I'm so chill. And then I would sleep for 10 hours.
Yeah, if you want to graduate, go for the tincture after that, because then you can just put that with your water and drink it right before bed, drink it throughout the day, have it with your coffee. It doesn't really taste like like that kind of CBD stuff you're used to. It's really good stuff. So yeah, that's what I would graduate to next.
It's not the CBD that I bought at the bodega for $150 when I was trying CBD out. That was crap. It tasted bad, and it was I didn't know how much it was.
Forget that stuff. That is that kind of turned me off of CBD for a long time, and then I tried this stuff, and this is the real deal. So yeah, don't worry about that gross taste or not working. Yeah, exactly.
Say no to Bodega CBD. Say yes to Sunset Lake CBD. 20% off. Type in NOMI, N-O-M-I, sunsetlakecbd.com. We will be right back in like a half a second with Jordan Zakarin and Simon Narode. Hey, welcome back. Wait, my microphone's over here. Sorry, I'm typing stuff. This whole setup here. I'm going to do it behind the scenes so you guys can see how insane the setup is today. It's called being on the road. It's just comes with the territory. All right. Now that the Wi-Fi is working, I'm excited to welcome to the show Simon Narode, who is a former organizer for Bernie Sanders 2020. He's a socialist writer, and he is a producer over here at the TNS. And Jordan Zakarin, even though you've told me 9,000 times, I don't know your new title because for some reason I didn't save it. We are a quality show here. I got a lot of hats. Okay, I'm doing a lot of jobs right now. But you are over at, well, first off, you're the founder of Progressives Everywhere newsletter, but you're a producer at
More Perfect Union.
More Perfect Union. I knew that was. I was just like, I don't want to screw it up.
It's okay.
I follow you guys.
It's new.
It's new
For me.
No,
I mean, it's kind of new for them, but
for you.
Definitely new for me.
Yeah, it's great. All right, so I want to talk about some very, very important news. I don't know if you guys heard, but the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, is now woke. We've made it, guys. We've made it. Let's roll the ad.
When I was 17, I quoted Zora Neale Hurston's How It Feels to Be Colored Me in my college application essay. The line that spoke to me stated simply, I am not tragically colored. There is no sorrow dammed up in my soul nor lurking behind my eyes. I do not mind at all. At 17, I had no idea what life would bring, but Zora's sentiment articulated so beautifully how I felt as a daughter of immigrants then and now. Nothing about me was or is tragic. I am perfectly made. I can wax eloquent on complex legal issues in English while also belting Guayaquil de mis amores in Spanish. I can change a diaper with one hand and console a crying toddler with the other. I am a woman of color. I am a mom. I am a cisgender millennial who's been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. I am intersectional, but my existence is not a box-checking exercise. I am a walking declaration. A woman whose inflection does not rise at the end of her sentences, suggesting that a question has been asked. I did not sneak into CIA. My employment was not and is not the result of a fluke or slip through the cracks. I earned my way in, and I earned my way up the ranks of this organization. I am educated, qualified, and competent, and sometimes I struggle. I struggle feeling like I could do more, be more to my two sons, and I struggle leaving the office when I feel there's so much more to do. I used to struggle with imposter syndrome, but at 36, I refuse to internalize misguided patriarchal ideas of what a woman can or should be. I am tired of feeling like I'm supposed to apologize for the space I occupy rather than intoxicate people with my effort, my brilliance. I am proud of me, full stop. My parents left everything they knew and loved to expose me to opportunities they never had. Because of them, I stand here today a proud first-generation Latina and officer at CIA. I am unapologetically me. I want you to be unapologetically you, whoever you are. Know your worth, command your space.
Okay, I'm just gonna lead with this. The best spies are the ones who fit in. I'm unapologetically going to occupy the space of bombing the community that I came from. Are you kidding me? I'm sorry. There's so much here. There's so much here. First off, it sounded like a therapy class, therapy session. Not. It was like an AA meeting. Like what was that, guys? That was insane. Jordan.
Well, I gotta say, first off, her cover's blown, right? Like if she was supposed to be a spy, like that's not gonna work anymore. So just that alone, I don't know what's going on there. I want to say two things. I think there was a point where she meets Gina Haspel, I think, and she's like the architect of the torture regime. So, I mean, great job. She's joined great company. I honestly, I think it's maybe like a psyops thing where they did that and they're going to show that liberals and progressives and people on the left are so angry about it. They're going to say, look, we go with woke and they won't even accept us. They're not patriotic. Like they couldn't have been making this in good faith, assuming that people would be like, oh yeah, that's right. We should go join the CIA and torture people. Like if they thought that was going to attract people, then like I would love to advise the CIA and just waste their money.
I mean, here's the thing, Simon, when people join the CIA, do they know that they're joining a torture institution, or do they think they're like, you know, in Homeland and like really getting the bad guys? And I feel like it's none of the above. I feel like you're recruited. Like they look for you. They see how you test. How I don't know. I mean, listen. As much as people say I'm part of the CIA, I actually don't understand.
No, I mean, I know someone who did an internship with the CIA, and he really thought that he was. I mean, he just thought it was like a great opportunity to like, I don't know, contribute. I don't know. I don't really know, but like, I don't think that they're all like excited to go bomb other places, right? While that is, of course, what the CIA is about, that and sort of destabilizing countries all over the world, you know, for American business interests mostly. But yeah, it's awful. I think it's very much doing the meme, right? Of the, you know, the airplane that has like the rainbow colors and the Black Lives Matter and the like Democrats versus Republicans. You know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's very much that, and it's just very frustrating to see the way that the establishment co-opts all of our sort of messages, like legitimate messages about intersectionality and identity politics and things like that, that just get so distorted. Like I did the focus right at the end of the video, like on her shirt with like the raised fist inside of the.
Mija.
Yeah, I mean, it's like what the raised fist is like. What is like you
resisting? Who do you think we're resisting?
That was I think
Who do you
the
think
rebellions.
is the power? You work for the power now. Like you're not resisting anything anymore. You know, it's very frustrating.
Maybe that was in honor of the coups that they attempt and they support. Maybe that's what it was for.
Listen, guys, they're reforming. They're reforming. They're no longer directly involved in the coups. They have 3 or 4 consultants to outsource them. That's how it
good.
works.
Well, as long as she doesn't have blood on her hands. I think we spent like 20, 30 years getting just constant CIA propaganda through pop culture anyways. I guess this is kind of the next step in a weird way.
Yeah, I mean, I love Homeland. I know what it is, guys. I know what it is. It even got to me. So it's like, you know, it's James Bond, same thing. Like you don't even realize what you're taking in, and it's such a great art form, but of course, all CIA propaganda. But I would like to show another video. There's another version of this video out there right now, another CIA propaganda video, equally as wokey.
I've never been like other girls, you know, I've never done what the patriarchy wanted me to do. When I was a little girl playing Marco Polo in the pool with my friends, I would hold their heads underwater and make them tell me where polo was. You know what I mean? When we played I Spy, I would always spy the communists, right? I would always spy the communists. And so just things like that. You know, in college, when other girls were doing acid, I was the one giving them the acid, and then I would psychologically torture them for information. And so I've always just been a little bit different. And that's why I joined the CIA. You know, if I could go back and tell this little baby girl something, I think I would tell her that, you know, women can do murder too. We can do a little murder too, if we want to.
I've already seen it like 10 times every single time.
It's perfect. It hits the nail on the head, yeah.
Perfect.
It's empowering. I mean, I can't say it as a man, I can't say, but I imagine it's very empowering.
Listen, if you murder with a little bit more empathy, you just have to look in the person's eyes. That's women come to the table with more empathy.
I think that George W. Bush called that compassionate conservatism.
It was, which he's still on, by the way. It has not died. I don't know if you guys got that memo from last week. Compassionate conservatism has not died. And it's evolved into painting photos of dogs. All right, speaking of unrest, which the CIA has had a lot of involvement in the global South, Colombia is on fire right now, and like no one seems to be covering what's happening in Colombia. There are a series of protests. I think we do have a video. No, we don't have a video of it. I thought we did. There's a series of protests happening in Colombia right now. Civil unrest. It's been trending like crazy, and I'm trying to pull this up. I can't get the link. I don't know. I'm sorry, guys. I thought there was a video. It's not a video. This is what happens when you have 16 jobs. So this all started just like every other country at this time over raising taxes on poor people, as there's austerity, as the tax proposal was pushed out specifically on poor people. Protests came out, there's police violence, they're protesting over inequality and unemployment, and then immediately afterwards, they decided that they were going to get rid of the taxes on poor people. So here's what I would like to know. CIA or whoever puts these leaders in charge, or maybe it's just corporations. I mean, it's become so sophisticated. You'd think that given all of their strategies around quelling and killing the communists and going after the left and putting spies and embedding them and all that kind of work, right? You think that they would know when they've gone too far. Like, this is such an obvious one, and immediately they had to get rid of this tax on poor people. So my question is like, did they know? Did they get a sense that it was going to go too far? We've all been involved in movements. There's a sense, like I'm in Puerto Rico right now, and the current governor immediately issued reforms because he was afraid, I believe, this is my editorializing, reforms against the femicide on the femicides, because he didn't want to have a situation that they had here a year and a half ago where 1/3 of Puerto Ricans turned out in protest of the governor, and the governor, the only governor in history, had to step down. He didn't want that to happen to him. So I'm looking at the situation in Colombia and I'm like, are they blind? Do they not understand that this unrest is going to lead to something much, much bigger? And that's why I think they immediately responded by getting rid of the tax hikes. But shouldn't they know that in advance?
I mean, it's not happening here. Like people can go crazy and, protest, and, whether it's, billionaires making like $1 trillion or something last year, as everyone else was needing just whatever small scrap of unemployment benefits they get, 8 million people go into poverty. I mean, that stuff, maybe because like we're so brainwashed in the sense that so many working people and poor people have, started, especially white ones, to now lean to the right or are heavy white. But maybe the CIA doesn't realize that in other places, people power works a lot better than it does here, or the government has to respond in a way that they've apparently just decided they're going to change the voting rules here. And so maybe they're just blind to the fact that social movements work when the power is not so entrenched as it is here.
Well, I mean, we happen to like work through electoralism too. I mean, our electoral system on the Democratic side, it does. I mean, listen, I'm not going to apologize to the Democrats. Obviously, the police unions still have cities in America on a stranglehold, but unions still pressure Biden in a way that we didn't expect. It doesn't happen like in a minute. Like when we have civil unrest in our country, the reforms don't happen immediately. They happen in conjunction with electoralism. That's my perspective, and labor, organized labor. In other countries, it shuts the country down, and there's just more of a culture of responding to civil unrest in a way that here, it's the pluses of our system is we do have more electoralism, but the minuses are when we do take to the streets, it's not as potent as other countries. Simon, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I do think also that we're very heavily propagandized in the United States. That as Jordan was talking about, like billionaires making $1 trillion last year, as people are being evicted, people are losing their jobs, people are struggling, people are losing their health care in the middle of a pandemic. Like, we ought to be out in the streets, right? Like over inequality, right? Yeah. But I think that, in capitalist economies, the state is always playing this balancing act of like, how much can we legitimate this exploitative economic system that without going so far that the people rise up, right? And in case that happens, we have these like state-sanctioned like militias who march through the streets with guns to quell any kind of uprising. So, and this, of course, has been totally normalized. And I guess in Colombia, the state went too far, right? And so now they're seeing the backlash of that.
Well, they went too far because they were getting so much credit for being a more, I don't want to say progressive, this wasn't progressive, but comparatively to Venezuela, to what's happening in Brazil, to other South American countries, the reform efforts had been a little bit more potent, I guess. I'm not going to like go all the way. So I think that's what, what people are worried about is a sort of an Arab Spring scenario which was much slower. Each of the countries in North Africa had vastly different economies, vastly different political situations, vastly different cultural norms, even though they were all Arabic. And I think there's a similarity in South America, maybe not culturally and like religious, but at least politically, the political dynamics based, and it's all, you know, it's all tied to natural resources. In North Africa, it was like, you know, Libya was rich because there was a lot of oil, and Egypt was poor because there was no oil, etc. So the conditions were different.
I'm glad you also mentioned right at the beginning of this segment that the United States has had a lot of involvement in Colombia, right, over like decades of like intervention in the country, and sort of the political situation now that has, you know, culminated in these protests. We are not like divorced from this economic interaction.
Yeah. No, we're not. Don't worry, guys. The woke CIA will solve it all. Yeah. Jordan Zakarin, Simon Narode. Jordan's got a jet. I got a jet. We all got a jet. Thank you all. And just a little a note to folks. Thank you for your patience yesterday. We had to shift the show last minute. I'm really grateful to everybody, but thank God we had some pre-tapes. So it was really wonderful. We have some shout outs. Bob Carmody, our fearless moderator, says, breaking news, the logo of Representative Lauren Boebert's pro-gun restaurant is being sold as an NFT by a rival political group after the Congresswoman let her ownership of it expire. That is some genius work. Genius. Craven James sent some love. Thank you, Craven James. Ian Kinzel says, when the CIA talks about being unapologetically you, I want to know if that extends to the anarchists with cans of soup for their families. Very smart. Shout out to everybody in the live chats. Thank you guys for joining as usual. Huge thank you to all of our moderators on YouTube and on Twitch, and everybody who's working at those algorithms. Those are the moderators. You guys are killing it. You're keeping our spaces troll free. Remember, not only are we on at 3 p.m. tomorrow, same time, same place, Twitch and YouTube, and of course on Patreon, but the new committee show is the committee program is on Mondays from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Tell your friends, tell your family. It's a new show, so it takes a lot of buzz to get it going. And if you're not on one of our patrons, join us on patreon.com/the Nomiki Show. Super important because that's how we keep this show running. We have all different levels. Definitely join us over there, patreon.com/the Nomiki Show. Prairie Fire Kowalski sends us some love as well. Thank you, Prairie Fire. And I'm assuming Harvey K's in the chat. So hi, Harvey. Harvey, I got your text. I'm so buried right now. I'm going to an interview. It's like, for folks who don't know, I'm filming a documentary in my downtime. And so it's like one after the other, and I just have to breathe for a second. So love you all. Thank you. Take care. We will see you tomorrow on Thursday.
The Nomiki Show. Clash momentarily for class solidarity. Cash circulating, give the masses back its currency. Greed from elites, oligarchs stay fed. Deep state, fake fed, everybody break bread. Racism, homophobia, sexism, religion in this melting pot we live in. Time to build a new system, unionize labor rights. Highlight the issue, talking heads left is best. The saga continues. The Nomiki Show. The Nomiki Show. The Nomiki Show. The Nomiki Show.